Hi guys, it's Pavi. I'm back with another expose video. This time, none of you will be surprised to know if you've been following me on X in the last 5 or 6 weeks, but I'm going to be talking about the Jannik Sinner failed drug case, the Jannik Sinner scandal, call it whatever you want, but I will be discussing that in a series of videos to try and expose the truth and try and ask some of the questions that still haven't been answered, in the hope that A, you as a viewer will get some more information, and B, it'll be interesting to hear your comments and thoughts on what you think. And I'm very, very keen that justice is done for all tennis players, not just the number one player in the world. And I will try and take you on a bit of a journey in terms of my own due diligence in this case, and it's been extensive. It's involved a number of high-level profile people in tennis players, tennis media, people that work in tennis, people that if you knew who I was in contact with would probably be shocked. But I'm not going to reveal their sources, not all of them anyway, apart from the ones that have been publicly supporting me and also raising this case as awareness. So I'm going to try and document all of that in a series of videos to try and explain a little bit more in terms of what I think has happened, what I think needs happening, and why I think it is one of the biggest cover-ups in tennis that we have ever seen in the sport. Now, a little bit of background. People who know me know I like to talk and waffle and go on, so I don't want to try and do that, but I just want to give you some background into kind of my motivations about this. First of all, this is not personal against Jannik Sinner. I know people will say, oh, he's a threat to Novak. He beat Novak in the Australian Open. He's the world number one. That's why you don't like him. All of that is false. Novak Djokovic has completed tennis. He can retire today and I'll be absolutely ecstatic. He's done everything in tennis. I'm not, that fan of his that thinks he's going to play on until 50 and 60 and I'm going to be lost when he's gone. He's given me huge amounts of satisfaction over the many years that I've supported him. And he is now 37. He is now not going to be playing week in, week out. We already know that. And, people like Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz are genuine contenders for him now. We've seen the matchups between the two. There's a close head-to-head, and Djokovic leads both of them still, but narrowly, and he's going to win some and he's going to lose some. So this has nothing to do with the fact that Jannik Sinner beat Djokovic in Australia, and it's nothing to do with Jannik Sinner as a person. And, if anyone doesn't believe me, you can look at every single title that Jannik Sinner has won, and I've probably been the first to congratulate him. Have I liked him? Probably not, I'll be honest with you. I don't particularly like him, but I don't dislike him either. I've been very neutral about Jannik Sinner. I find his personality, this is before the whole scandal, was a little bit bland. And I found his game a little bit bland. It's just not my type of tennis and not my type of personality. But that doesn't mean that I have anything personal against Jannik Sinner at all in any way, shape or form. He seems a nice guy. I met him briefly at Wimbledon. I said hello. He said hello back. He seemed nice, humble, and I mentioned that at the time. So I've got absolutely no personal agenda against Jannik Sinner, and I would be doing this investigation for any high-profile top player. Even if even if Novak Djokovic was that I felt was taking drugs intentionally or was cheating, I would call that out. This isn't about any player. This is about fairness, equality, and it's about having a level playing field in tennis, not just for the world number one, but for all rankings, top, low, male, female. Every single person should be treated the same and have the same procedures. And I believe in this circumstance that has not happened. So there's a lot of information here. So, unfortunately, I can't put this all into one video. I'm not on a teleprompter, so all of the stuff that I'm going to say is going to come to my head. There's loads of stuff that I want to say that I'll probably forget. So I'll come back to stuff as and when, and that's the reason why I probably need to do 2 or 3 videos to kind of articulate what I have found and kind of put my points of view across. to anyone that's listening to this, and hopefully what my aim is to do is to expose a little bit of the facts around the case, some background around the case, and what I think should have been done and what should be done in the future. So first of all, it's been, I think, 5 or 6 weeks since the news broke about Jannik Sinner failing 2 drug tests but still being allowed to play in tennis. Now, that is a precedent in the ITIA's history, in that a player who was suspended not just once, but with 2 drug tests. Now, this wasn't a sample A and a sample B. They were 2 drug tests taken 8 days apart, which both showed a banned substance called clostebol, which is known to increase endurance and muscle mass, was found in Jannik Sinner's system. Now, the amount was minimal, but that really doesn't have any, regard in the circumstances. That shouldn't be in a system, full stop. Doesn't matter if it's a 1 millimeter grain or not. We've already heard the Portuguese ex-WADA director have said that clostebol can also be used as a masking agent, and so it shouldn't be in your system, and it doesn't matter the amount that was in the system. It could have been in the system before, we don't know. It shouldn't have been in the system, full stop. He failed 2 drug tests, and that should, in my opinion, have resulted in a lengthy suspension from the sport until a full and thorough investigation was done to find out what exactly had happened. But we now know that didn't happen. Now, the first thing that I am completely stunned about is that Jannik Sinner is one of the most high-profile tennis players in the world at the moment. I go to my local gym and tennis club, and there's posters of Jannik Sinner everywhere. In the last year, he's been on billboards in London, in Italy, in New York. He is being promoted by a lot of very, very big organisations that have invested a lot in him. No more so than Nike, who he recently signed a £143 million deal, a record-breaking deal for Nike for a tennis player, and that was signed by Jannik Sinner. So he is very, very high profile. Now, what I find astonishing, and there's so many things that I find astonishing in this case, is that Jannik Sinner did not hold a press conference either at the time where he was found to have failed 2 drug tests, or after. So once it's become public, and I think the only reason that it became public was that a whistleblower was going to put the information out into the public domain, so they had no choice but to document all of the case. I will go into the reasons for that later. So a few weeks have since passed since the US Open. There has still been no official press conference from Jannik Sinner to explain his point of view. All he's had is a couple of questions from the Tennis Channel and from people in the US Open that have asked him a couple of questions, and he's kind of given responses, but they haven't been detailed responses. They haven't been really pushing questions. A lot of the questions are from Darren Cahill's colleagues. Now, Darren Cahill is obviously a senior coach for Jannik Sinner, an active coach for Jannik Sinner, who also works in tennis media. So I'm stunned, really, that the press conference isn't there, where, there was a designated event where media and accredited journalists could go in and ask unlimited questions, because we needed to hear exactly what Jannik Sinner needed, what he said, and we wanted to see if that kind of married up with all the information that we know from the 33-page report that I've read thoroughly that was done in the tribunal for the ITIA. Now, what I want to talk to you in this video is the background about Jannik Sinner. Now, Jannik Sinner kind of burst onto the scene as a teenager. It was very obvious to anyone who watches the sport, and I watch tennis more than any other sport. It's a big passion of mine, that Jannik Sinner was going to be a really, really good player. He had all the attributes. He had speed, he had power, he had precision, and he seemed to have a very, very good temperament. And that took him to kind of top 10 in the world at the age of around 21. and 20. Now, Jannik Sinner was desperate to kind of move on to the next level. And the next level is winning slams, being the world number one. And at this point, because he was young, because the likes of Federer and Nadal were coming to the end of their careers, big companies like Nike, Prada, Gucci, these companies, a lot of the companies that had been previously invested in other of these top players that I've mentioned, had a budget to really reinvest into a top player that they could really champion as being the greatest, and someone who could really challenge Novak Djokovic. Because we all know that a lot of the establishment are not big fans of Novak Djokovic. You know, he is someone who is very much his own man. He's someone that they've tried to control, they can't. He's someone that they've tried to push their narratives, and he won't. So he's also from Serbia, which we know is an issue for them. He's not from the West. There's a lot of boxers. There's a lot of reasons. He kind of ruined the fact that they wanted either Roger Federer or Nadal to be the GOAT. And he's disrupted a lot of their plans. So, you know, we know that from loads of history, and that's a separate video on its own, that they were looking for someone to come out and challenge Djokovic both on and off the court, mainly on. And they picked Jannik Sinner as being the chosen one, really. And this happened around a couple of years ago. Now, a couple of years ago, Jannik Sinner had a coaching team of 5 or 6 people, including mentors that he'd worked with since kids. Jannik Sinner decided to get rid of all of his coaching team. It was a shock at the time because everyone was saying, well, you know, he's just on the verge, you know, he's in and around the top 10, he's progressing. Why on earth would he want to do that when he's got on well? And Jannik Sinner's always talked about loyalty and how, you know, it's important for him to have the people that he knows and trusts. And these are people that he's known and trust all of his lives. But he decided to get rid of that. Now, I don't know whether that was a decision made by Nike or some of his handlers, because at this point he's now becoming prominent and he's being advised by, you know, various people and organizations, or whether it was something that Jannik wanted to do himself. That is something that is the first question that I want to ask Jannik, whether that was a decision that he made or whether it was something that was forced upon him. But the next point really is the people that he brought on into the team. So in 2022, he brought on the fitness trainer called Humberto Pereira, a very, very experienced fitness trainer, a qualified pharmacist. He knows the game inside out. He's been in tennis for 15 years. He was the fitness coach of Philippe Volondri, who is now the Italian Davis Cup captain. And so had pedigree of working with top and elite players. He also brought on to the team Giacomo Naldi, who was an experienced physio. He'd been a physio for Bologna, which was a top basketball team in Italy. And he, again, brought a lot of experience and knowledge into the game. And then to cap it off, you know, one of the most well-respected and most experienced coaches in the world, Darren Cahill, joined the team. And, you know, obviously he had a lot of success with Simona Halep, but he's also coached the likes of Andre Agassi and has worked with Fernando Velasco and a whole heap of other top players. Later Hewitt as well, I believe he coached at some point as well. So he came on into the team in 2022. Now, at this stage, Jannik Sinner was struggling to kind of really go past the semis and quarters of Grand Slams. And a lot of the time, his body was failing him. So, you know, you'd look back and he had a lot of physical issues. He was struggling with the rigors of Grand Slams. And he was struggling with a little bit with his build as well, because he isn't one of the biggest tennis players out there, and that puts you at a disadvantage. So essentially what the team was kind of briefed upon, and Humberto Ferreira said at the time, was that Sinner was very, very good, but he needed to improve. They wanted to improve his physicality, and they wanted quick results, because at this stage he was signing multi-million deals with a lot of top sponsors. There was a lot of pressure on Jannik Sinner to deliver. And so those 2 years began. And what we saw in those 2 years, and last year in particular, was that Jannik Sinner suddenly became a really, really consistent player. Instead of kind of making quarters and slams, he's now going deep in Masters events. He's now going deep in slams. He's challenging Djokovic in Wimbledon. Everyone will remember when he went 2-0 up in 2022 Wimbledon, albeit he lost 3-2, but he was getting closer and closer, and you could see his improvements, and those improvements really came to the fore in 2023 at the end of the season when he first of all beat Djokovic in an ATP round robin match in the ATP Tour final. He then subsequently lost the final to Djokovic, but then he won the Davis Cup final for Italy by beating Djokovic in a winner-takes-all tie in Italy and Serbia. And that really propelled him to kind of where he is right now. So his career has really improved and has got consistent as soon as this new coaching team has been with him. They've seen unbelievable results. Darren Cahill was interviewed by Tennis Majors shortly after Sinner had won his first ever Grand Slam in January 2024. And one of the questions was, how has Jannik Sinner become like a top 10 player, someone who struggled to kind of really go deep in slams, to all of a sudden becoming, a top 3 player and now winning a Grand Slam? And Darren Cahill said that the most important piece of the jigsaw has been their fitness coach, Umberto Ferrero. And he said the work that he's done with Jannik Sinner is phenomenal. And it's something that he doesn't know how he's got his results, but he has done. And he credited that kind of improvement and success to Jannik Sinner to this new fitness coach that joined the team in 2022. Now, why I want to focus on Umberto Ferrero is that whilst he was a fitness coach of Philippe Valandri was faced a drug ban for using excessive use of an asthma inhaler. Now, I believe he appealed the decision and it was overturned eventually, but the fact is that he was banned for 3 or 6 months. I'll have to double check on that. I don't know if it was 3 or 6 months, but he was banned from the sport for taking it because they said it was too excessive. So Umberto Ferreira has got experience of what it's like to deal with an athlete that has failed a drug test. Now, Darren Cahill went on in an interview, which I've posted on X a few weeks ago, which told us that Umberto Ferreira was a very, very serious man who took his job very, very seriously and importantly, as he should as a fitness coach. And he was in charge of pretty much everything that Jannik Sinner was taking, whether it be nutrition, substances, medicines. He's a trained pharmacist. His job was to make sure that everything that he took was all legit. So, they know that he's the number 1 player in the tennis world. They know that he's going to be scrutinised. And they know they have to be very, very diligent with anything that they have with them or around them. Now, Jannik Sinner has just won the Australian Open. He is on his greatest start to a season ever. Only Novak Djokovic has had a better start at this point to a season than Jannik Sinner. He wins Rotterdam. He wins the Australian Open. He is winning pretty much everything that he is entering. And all of a sudden, he is no longer struggling with his endurance. He looks as though he's bulked up a little bit. He's still not the size of some other players, but it looks as though he's got stronger. Now, in February or March, I think it was February, according to the information that we were going, Umberto Ferreira went into a pharmacy and bought a spray, which we don't know what he was using for, called Trifadol, which is there to use for cuts and sprays. It's banned in all countries apart from Italy. He bought that in Italy, and decided to take that spray with him to the United States of America for the Miami Masters. That spray is banned by the FDA in the US of A. So when he was boarding the plane, he would have had to have signed a document to say, are you bringing anything into the USA that is banned? He would have likely have said no, because if he had said yes, that spray would have been confiscated. He said no, but he took that spray with him, knowing that it was not only banned in the USA, but it was banned in tennis. And the reason why it was banned is it had a substance called cholesterol in that spray that was being used by a number of Italians, in particular, athletes, as a way of either masking steroid use or for using it as an anabolic steroid to improve their performance. Because if you Google clostebol, the benefits of clostebol are twofold. They improve endurance and they improve muscle mass. Now, if you go back to kind of when the team joined, the team had specifically said in 2022 that they wanted Jannik Sinner to improve his endurance and his strength. So that is the first kind of coincidence, in that he's been found to take a spray to Miami, which he shouldn't have had. Now, this is, again, taken from excerpts from the tribunal and also from what we've been told by Darren Cahill and members of the team. Obviously, at the time, we didn't know. But Jannik Sinner's physio, Giacomo Naldi, apparently had a cut on his little finger. And he cut his finger by putting his hand into his medical bag, and there was an open scalpel. So that's the first bit of negligence. Probably the second, because you shouldn't have a spray in there anyway. He cut himself on this scalpel. He is a top tennis player's physio. His job is to make sure that risks and injuries are minimised. He's left an open scalpel in a medical bag. He cuts it, apparently, and he puts a plaster on his little pinky finger, which everyone can see because it's kind of caught on video. Some may say conveniently, some may say it was just a coincidence. Now, Darren Cahill said that he kind of saw the cut and said, what have you done? And Naldi basically referred to him and said, it's absolutely fine. It was just a little cut. It will, I'm not going to take anything for it. It will be absolutely fine. We were then told that Sinner asked him and said, is everything okay? Because, Naldi is treating Sinner every single day at this point. So, he needs to know if he's got any injuries, if he's taking any substances, any creams. And apparently Sinner asked him and said, are you taking any substances? Is there anything to be worried about? And Naldi said, no, there isn't. Now, we're going to go back to Humberto Ferreira. Now, he's picked this spray before knowing that Naldi was going to have a cut to the finger. Now, they're going to the US of A. They're not going to a third world country. The USA have got some of the best medical equipment, products, facilities in the entire world. If you pick up an injury, you go to the US and you can buy pretty much whatever you want. It's, a lot of it is private. So, there's no issues for a professional elite athlete to get whatever you need that is lawful in the US to help you with any injuries or any cuts or anything like that. Now, we've been told that Humberto Ferreira is very, very diligent with what Sinner takes. And he's actually in charge of his anti-doping to make sure that every substance, every medicines that he takes is in line with what he can take. He is a pharmacist by trade. Now, on this spray, it clearly said that this is against anti-doping. It had a cross to say this is not allowed in professional sport. And the reason they started putting that warding on in Italy is because so many people were doing it. So it's known to Italians that this spray shouldn't be used. Ferreira then gives this spray to Naldi, fully aware that he shouldn't, A, have it in the United States, and B, it contains a banned substance that he knows a number of Italians have failed drug tests and have had bans for having evidence of this spray. He gives it to Naudi, full well knowing that Naudi is treating Jannik Sinner every single day. We've been told that Jannik Sinner has psoriasis. We've been told he's had lesions. He gives the spray to Naudi and explains that be careful because it's a banned substance. Naudi takes this substance. Now, here's the bit of the story that doesn't make sense to me. A lot of it doesn't, but this is particularly is bizarre. Now, he apparently uses this spray to help with a cut on his finger for 8 consecutive days. Now, anyone who's had a cut on the finger, it's very common, paper cuts. Anyone who plays sport will pick up a little cut. You normally put a plaster on for a couple of days. It heals. You know, you might put a bit of moisturising cream if it's dry afterwards. You put a plaster on, it heals, it's done. If it's serious and it's a really bad cut, you get stitches on it. You go to a hospital, you get stitches on it, and then you wait until the stitches come out, and then you treat it. But Naudi decided that he was going to use this cream for 8 consecutive days, take off the bandage, and continue to massage Jannik Sinner with the cut in full view. And he says he forgot to put any protective gloves on for 8 days. He was asked if he washed his hands. He couldn't remember. Now, these are the basics of any hygiene healthcare professional. You can speak to anyone and they will say, if you've got a cut and you are a professional healthcare expert, which Naudi was, there is huge risks of infection, of transmission, of HIV, of septicemia. There's loads of problems that can happen here. Okay, so huge red flags, massive red flags. But Naudi continues to treat Sinner for 8 consecutive days with a cut finger using this spray that's banned, that he's been told is banned. And that is the explanation given by the team to why Jannik Sinner failed not just 1 test, but 2 drug tests for having this in his system. Okay, so that is the bit that I am questioning, because I think there's a number of red flags for it to question. Now, another big red flag with regards to Umberto Ferreira, we already know he works with Philip Vondry, who's already failed a drug test early in his career. Now, I've been researching Giacomo Naudi. He worked in the Bologna team for basketball as a physio. And there's a basketball player that had the very same cholesterol in his system. And Naudi was part of that physio team. So Naudi will be fully aware, it happens once to an athlete. You've got to be, you've got to think, this is really, really, I've got to make sure that this can't happen. So those are the 2 key elements of this story that I wanted to discuss with you. First is the story that we were given why Jannik Sinner had a banned substance in his system was because his fitness coach bought a spray in Italy, which he knew was banned. He took it to the USA, which he knew was banned. It had warning signs that told him it was banned. He then gave it to Jannik Sinner's physio, who then told him it was banned, and he decided to use the spray even though he knew that it had a bad substance in him. So I am saying that these are either the 2 most incompetent professionals that you're going to have, or we're not being told the truth. And that is what I want further investigation to do. And I want more questions about that, because I am someone who doesn't always believe what people say. And people may say I'm a cynic. People may call me a conspiracy theorist. But I've lived in this world long enough to know that people don't always tell the truth. And people cover each other for whatever reason. I do not know if Jannik Sinner was aware of what was happening. I don't. Really don't. So I can't say he's a drug cheat. He did this intentionally. What I can say is that in my opinion, that both his fitness trainer and physio have undertook a number of negligible actions that, if the tribunal had found that they were negligent, would have resulted in a lengthy suspension for Jannik Sinner. They found no fault or negligence for either Jannik Sinner or any of his team. Now, I'm going to end that first video here because, as I said, there's a lot more to go into this. The first video that I've done here really focuses on the story given by Jannik Sinner and his team as to why he had this in his system. And it's up to you to decide what you want to believe. It's up to you. But all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put the facts out for you. I've said a million times on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it, this isn't personal against Jannik Sinner. For me, integrity, fairness, equality are the most important principles that I follow in my life, but also that I want for in tennis. Tennis is a sport that's given me loads. I've run a tennis club for 20 years. I play tennis 2 to 3 times a week. I follow volley tennis long before Novak Djokovic. As a kid, I used to queue in Wimbledon overnight. You know, tennis is my passion, but also as my passion is finding the truth and to make sure that we are in a sport that is free of any corruption. So this is why I'm passionate about it. I'm not accusing anyone, but what I want to know is I want more explanations regarding that, because I just don't think they are plausible. And at the moment, I believe that both Naldi and Ferreira have probably signed NDAs where they're unable to speak about their roles in what happened, which, again, is the red flag. If it was an innocent mistake, if it happened, why are they now no longer part of the team? If Jannik Sinner and Darren Cahill said they knew after 5 minutes where the source of contamination came from, were they not sacked on the spot in March in Miami when they found out? You know, they carried on working with them. You know, we've seen pictures of Naldi celebrating with Sinner in June, 3 months later in Halle. So there's a number of questions that I would like to ask them, but I believe they have signed NDAs. If you have got nothing to be fearful of and you don't think you've done any wrong, you wouldn't sign an NDA and you wouldn't sack those individuals. So those are the questions that I want to know. Now, thank you for listening, for anyone that's come up to the 33-minute mark. As I said, this isn't anything personal against Jannik. I just want there to be a full investigation. And I do not know at this stage if their story is accurate or not, but I'm just putting out some facts which not many people know. They don't bother to have a look. And I will be interested to see what you think. Leave your comments below. You know, there's loads of things that I've missed off here because there's going to be other videos that I'm going to detail into more detail about what happened after Miami, and then I'm going to talk about the whole ITIA process, how ITA is funded. I'm going to talk about Jannik Sinner's lawyers that he decided to use, the conflict of interest in using the same lawyer that represents ITIA as well as him, and the media silence. You know, the fact that a number of players questioned Sinner, but it was quickly quietened down. There's a lot more to come out of this, but this is the first video. I hope you enjoyed. As I said, these are my views, my personal views that I've generated after doing my own independent due diligence, and I'm going to sign off for now, and I will have another installment very soon which will go into more details regarding this case. Take care, God bless you all, and yeah, have a great day.